Karen, a middle-aged white woman, sits on a park bench, her eyes fixed on Malik and his friends. The group of young black men laugh and play with a PlayStation 5, their joy a stark contrast to Karen's scowling face. She watches them intently, her fingers drumming against her thigh as she contemplates her next move. As the laughter grows louder, Karen's frown deepens. She can't stand the idea of these young men having something she believes they don't deserve. In her mind, their happiness is an affront to her status. She stands up, smoothing her designer clothes, and makes a decision. With purposeful strides, Karen approaches the group. Her heart races, fueled by a misplaced sense of entitlement. As she reaches Malik, she lunges for the console, her manicured nails scratching at the plastic surface. Malik, caught off guard, tightens his grip on the PlayStation 5. He looks up at Karen, confusion and anger flashing in his eyes. "What are you doing?" Malik demands, his voice steady despite the sudden intrusion. His friends stop their game, turning to face the unfolding scene. Karen tugs harder, her face reddening with effort and embarrassment. Malik stands his ground, refusing to let go of his property. The park falls silent as onlookers begin to notice the confrontation. Karen's actions, born from prejudice and a misguided sense of superiority, have set in motion a chain of events that will challenge not only her beliefs but also expose the systemic injustices lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly peaceful community. The peaceful afternoon in the park suddenly erupts into chaos. Karen, realizing her attempt to grab the PlayStation 5 has failed, switches tactics. She lets out a piercing scream, her voice echoing across the park. "Help! He's attacking me!" she shrieks, pointing at Malik. Malik's friends freeze in disbelief as Karen continues her performance. Tears stream down her face as she backs away, maintaining her accusatory stance. Onlookers turn their heads, some reaching for their phones to call the authorities. Within minutes, police sirens wail in the distance, growing louder as they approach the park. 2 patrol cars screech to a halt near the group. Officers jump out, hands on their holsters, surveying the scene. Karen rushes towards them, her voice quivering as she spins her fabricated tale. "Officers, that man tried to assault me when I asked him to turn down the volume of his game," she sobs, gesturing wildly at Malik. Malik, still clutching his PlayStation 5, tries to interject. "That's not true. She tried to take my console," he explains, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. The officers look between Karen and Malik, clearly unsure of whom to believe. Malik's friends gather around him, forming a protective circle. One of them, a young woman named Tasha, pulls out her phone and starts recording the interaction. "We all saw what happened," she states firmly, her camera focused on the officers and Karen. "She's lying." The atmosphere grows tense as more parkgoers stop to watch the unfolding drama. Karen's false accusations hang in the air, a stark reminder of the prejudices that still plague their community. As the officers begin to question everyone involved, it becomes clear that this incident is far from over. Sarah, a young activist enjoying her afternoon in the park, witnesses the entire scene unfold. Without hesitation, she pulls out her phone and starts recording, capturing Karen's false accusations and the police response. As soon as she has enough footage, Sarah opens her social media app and begins a live stream. "I'm at Central Park, where a white woman just tried to steal a black man's PlayStation and is now falsely accusing him of assault," Sarah narrates, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. She pans her camera, showing Karen talking animatedly to the police officers while Malik and his friends stand nearby, visibly distressed. Within minutes, Sarah's live stream attracts hundreds of viewers. Comments flood in, expressing outrage at Karen's behavior and support for Malik. Local activist groups quickly pick up the story, sharing it across various platforms. #JusticeForMalik starts trending in their city. As the incident unfolds, local news outlets catch wind of the viral video. A reporter from the city's most-watched news channel arrives at the park, microphone in hand, ready to interview witnesses and get statements from those involved. Meanwhile, Karen notices the growing crowd and the phones pointed in her direction. The realization that her actions are being recorded and shared dawns on her. Panic sets in as she sees her carefully curated image crumbling before her eyes. She pulls out her own phone, frantically scrolling through her social media feeds, watching in horror as the video of her false accusation spreads like wildfire. Desperately, Karen starts reporting the posts, trying to get them taken down. But for every post she manages to flag, 10 more pop up. The story has taken on a life of its own, far beyond her control. As she looks up from her phone, she sees the news reporter approaching, and the full weight of her actions begins to sink in. As night falls, the park transforms into a sea of flickering candles. A hastily organized vigil in support of Malik draws hundreds of community members. People of all ages and backgrounds gather, united in their stand against discrimination and racism. At the center of the crowd, Malik stands on a makeshift platform, his PlayStation 5 tucked safely under his arm. The console, once just a gaming device, has become a symbol of resistance against prejudice. Malik clears his throat and begins to speak, his voice initially shaky but growing stronger with each word. "What happened to me today isn't unique," Malik says, his eyes scanning the crowd. "It's a reflection of what many of us face every day." He goes on to share personal experiences of discrimination, each anecdote met with nods of understanding and murmurs of support from the audience. As Malik speaks, people in the crowd begin to share their own stories. A middle-aged woman recounts being followed in stores. A young man describes being pulled over by police for no apparent reason. Each story adds to the growing realization of how deeply ingrained racism is in their community. The vigil becomes more than just a show of support for Malik. It evolves into a forum for open dialogue about racial injustice. Community leaders step forward, pledging to address systemic issues and promote equality. Local politicians, sensing the shifting mood, make promises of policy changes and increased accountability. On the outskirts of the gathering, partially hidden behind a tree, stands Karen. She watches the proceedings with a mix of emotions: anger, confusion, and a growing sense of isolation. As she observes the unity and passion of the crowd, Karen begins to realize the full impact of her actions. Her neighbors, people she's known for years, are among those holding candles and cheering for Malik. She feels the weight of their judgment, even from a distance. A week after the incident, the community organizes a town hall meeting to address racial issues. Karen, feeling increasingly isolated and desperate to salvage her reputation, decides to attend and confront Malik directly. As Malik takes the stage to share his experiences, Karen pushes through the crowd. "Excuse me," she interrupts, her voice shrill with nervous energy. "I think we need to hear both sides of the story." The room falls silent. Malik, surprised but composed, turns to face Karen. "Go ahead," he says calmly. "We're listening." Karen launches into a rehearsed speech about her concerns for the community and how she was just trying to keep the peace that day in the park. As she speaks, her arguments sound increasingly hollow, even to her own ears. Malik listens patiently, then responds, "Karen, I understand you may have felt threatened, but have you considered why? What about me and my friends playing in the park made you assume we were dangerous?" His questions, delivered without anger but with firm conviction, expose the flaws in Karen's reasoning. She stumbles over her words, unable to provide a satisfactory answer that doesn't reveal her racial bias. As Karen flounders, a voice from the crowd calls out, "You can't justify racism with more racism, Karen." The crowd murmurs in agreement. Karen, feeling the weight of public opinion turning against her, becomes visibly agitated. She points an accusing finger at Malik. "You're twisting my words. This isn't fair." Malik remains calm. "Fairness is exactly what we're discussing here, Karen. The fairness that everyone deserves, regardless of their skin color." Unable to counter Malik's logic and faced with the community's disapproval, Karen storms out of the meeting. As she leaves, she hears the applause for Malik's composure and wisdom, further fueling her anger and confusion. In the days following the town hall meeting, Karen finds herself increasingly isolated. Her phone, once constantly buzzing with invitations and gossip, now remains eerily silent. She scrolls through her social media feeds, noticing how many of her so-called friends have distanced themselves from her. Desperate for support, Karen reaches out to her closest friend, Linda. "Can you believe how they're treating me? Karen complains over the phone. I was just trying to keep our neighborhood safe. There's a long pause before Linda responds, her voice uncharacteristically serious. Karen, have you considered that maybe you were wrong? That your actions were based on unfair assumptions? Karen is taken aback. Not you too, Linda. I thought you'd understand. I understand that you're hurting, Linda replies. But have you thought about how Malik and other people of color in our community feel? The constant suspicion they face? As Linda continues to challenge her views, Karen feels her certainty crumble. For the first time, she's forced to confront the reality of her racial biases. In a desperate attempt to salvage her reputation, Karen comes up with a plan. She decides to organize a charity fundraiser in honor of community unity, secretly hoping it will paint her in a more positive light. She sends out invitations, including one to Malik, framing the event as a step towards healing community divides. However, as she plans the fundraiser, she can't shake the feeling that her motives are transparent to everyone but herself. As RSVPs trickle in, far fewer than she expected, Karen realizes that her plan might backfire. Instead of rebuilding her status, this event could further expose her manipulative behavior. Yet, too proud to back down, she forges ahead, unaware that her actions are about to lead to an even greater reckoning. When Malik and Sarah receive Karen's invitation to the fundraiser, they immediately recognize it as a thinly veiled attempt at image rehabilitation. Instead of ignoring it, they decide to use this opportunity to further the conversation about racial equality in their community. Malik reaches out to local civil rights organizations and community leaders, inviting them to attend the event. Sarah uses her social media influence to spread the word, framing the fundraiser as a chance for open dialogue about systemic racism. On the night of the event, Karen nervously greets guests at the door of the community center. Her smile falters as she sees the diverse crowd filing in, many wearing t-shirts with slogans like Black Lives Matter and Equality Now. As the program begins, Karen takes the stage, her hands shaking slightly as she grips the microphone. Welcome, everyone, she begins, her voice overly cheerful. I'm so glad we could all come together for this wonderful cause. However, the audience's attention quickly shifts as Malik steps up to speak. Thank you, Karen, for providing this platform, he says, his voice steady and clear. I'd like to take this opportunity to discuss the real issues facing our community. Malik delivers a powerful speech about the importance of recognizing and addressing racial bias. He shares personal stories and statistics, painting a vivid picture of the challenges faced by people of color in their town. The audience responds with enthusiastic applause and nods of agreement. Many stand up to share their own experiences, turning the event into an impromptu forum on racial justice. Karen, still on stage, feels increasingly uncomfortable. She hadn't anticipated this turn of events. As she watches the engaged crowd, she realizes her plan has backfired spectacularly. Instead of rehabilitating her image, she's provided a platform for the very conversations she'd hoped to avoid. As the event continues, Karen slips away from the main hall, finding refuge in the empty bathroom. She stares at her reflection in the mirror, mascara smudged from wiping away tears. The weight of her actions and their consequences finally starts to sink in. A knock on the door startles her. Karen, are you okay? It's Linda, her voice tinged with concern. Karen emerges, her composure barely intact. Linda suggests she address the audience again, to show she's listening and learning. Reluctantly, Karen agrees. Back in the main hall, Karen takes the stage once more. I want to apologize, she begins, her voice shaky. But as she continues, her words ring hollow, sounding more like excuses than a genuine apology. The audience's skeptical expressions make it clear they're not convinced. Later that week, a local news station invites Karen for an interview, offering her a chance to tell her side of the story. Karen sees this as an opportunity to salvage her reputation. However, her attempts to justify her actions fall flat. The interviewer presses her on her racial biases, and Karen's responses come across as defensive and insincere. As the interview airs, social media erupts with criticism. Clips of Karen's most tone-deaf statements go viral, further damaging her image. The final blow comes when Jamal, one of Malik's friends who was present during the initial incident, releases a statement describing how Karen's actions affected him. "It's not just about that day in the park," Jamal explains. "It's about feeling unsafe and unwelcome in your own community every single day." Jamal's words resonate deeply with many in the town, prompting an outpouring of support for him and Malik. As Karen reads Jamal's statement, something finally shifts within her. For the first time, she begins to truly question her motivations and the impact of her prejudices on others. In the aftermath of the failed fundraiser and disastrous interview, Malik's story gains national attention. He's invited to speak at a prestigious conference on racial equality in a nearby city. The event draws civil rights leaders, politicians, and media from across the country. As Malik prepares for his speech, Karen learns about the conference through local news coverage. Her initial reaction is a mix of jealousy and resentment. She considers ways to discredit Malik or disrupt the event, her mind racing with petty schemes. However, when Karen shares these thoughts with Linda, her friend is appalled. "Karen, stop," Linda says firmly. "Can't you see that this kind of thinking is exactly what got you into this mess? It's time to take a hard look at yourself and make some real changes." Linda's words hit Karen like a bucket of cold water. For the first time, she begins to see her behavior from an outside perspective. The realization of how her actions have affected others, not just Malik, but the entire community, starts to sink in. On the day of the conference, Malik takes the stage to thunderous applause. He speaks eloquently about his experience, using it as a launching point to discuss broader issues of systemic racism and the need for community-wide change. "What happened to me isn't just about one person's actions," Malik says. "It's about the biases that exist in all of us and the systems that perpetuate them. But it's also about the power of community to come together and demand better." As Malik's words are broadcast on local television, Karen watches from her living room. She listens intently, her expression a mix of shame and dawning understanding. For the first time, she truly hears Malik's message without defensiveness clouding her judgment. The conference marks a turning point for the community. Task forces are formed to address racial biases in local institutions. Schools implement new cultural awareness programs. The police department announces a review of its training and policies. Karen, watching all of this unfold, realizes she has a choice to make. She can continue down her current path, clinging to her prejudices and growing increasingly isolated. Or she can take the difficult but necessary steps toward genuine change and redemption. As the conference reaches its climax, Malik delivers a powerful closing statement that surprises everyone, including Karen, who's watching from home. "We've talked a lot about the incident that brought us here," Malik says, his voice firm yet compassionate. "But I want to address something important. The woman involved, Karen, isn't just an antagonist in my story. She represents a larger struggle against ingrained prejudices that many people face." The audience listens in rapt attention as Malik continues. "It's easy to vilify individuals, but harder to address the systemic issues that shape their beliefs. I challenge Karen, and others like her, to take this opportunity for growth and change." As Malik's words echo through the conference hall and across television screens, Karen feels a complex mix of emotions. She's simultaneously defensive and ashamed, but also oddly touched by Malik's unexpected empathy. Social media explodes with reactions to Malik's speech. Many praise his maturity and vision, while others express skepticism about the possibility of redemption for people like Karen. The debate rages online, putting Karen's actions back in the spotlight. Feeling the pressure of public scrutiny, Karen makes a decision. She reaches out to a local community center that focuses on racial equality and requests a meeting. It's a difficult step for her, but she realizes it's necessary. During the meeting, Karen finally admits to her biases and the harm she's caused. "I was wrong," she says, her voice trembling. "I want to learn and do better." The center's director, though cautious, offers Karen resources and suggests she participate in their education programs. News of Karen's efforts to educate herself spreads quickly. Some community members are supportive, while others remain skeptical. Malik, true to his words at the conference, publicly acknowledges Karen's efforts without excusing her past actions. "Change is possible," Malik states in a press conference, "but it requires genuine effort and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths." I hope Karen's journey can serve as an example of the transformative power of education and empathy. As the story comes full circle, the community finds itself at a crossroads. Karen's path to redemption is just beginning, and it won't be easy. But Malik's response has opened the door for a more nuanced conversation about prejudice, personal growth, and the possibility of change. The incident that began with a PlayStation in the park has become a catalyst for broader discussions about race, privilege, and community responsibility. As the town grapples with these complex issues, there's a sense of cautious optimism that real, lasting change might be possible.